Luca. I speak to you today from the Washington, D.C. area. I'm from Albania, and I want to talk about some very, very ancient times immemorable, long time ago. Beyond the memories of the mankind, the world was a very prosperous place. It was a very advanced and very civilized world. At the time I'm talking about, that is some 50,000-60,000 years ago, the world was ruled mainly by two superpowers, armed to the teeth with nukes pointed at each other. Was the Phonecians, or as we in Albania call it, Pelasgot, and the Atlantis, or as we call Atlantid. The two biggest powers, and the biggest powers the world has ever seen. They spoke a language that survived after the Phonecians, which was what we call today Greco-Albanian world, sacked Atlantis. The world was in turmoil. Most of the nations disappeared, and from them we had the remaining tribes that would live up to form states again. And they were the Phoenicians that went close to what is today Lebanon. We had the Greco-Etruscans or Phonecians that occupied or continue to occupy what is today's Turkey and Romania and Ukraine and Bulgaria, of course Greece, Albania, what you have today, Serbia, Croatia, whatever. These were the Greco-Albanian speaking Illyro-Hellenic tribes. We have Etruscans in what is today Sardinia or Italy. These were the few nations that had to be in years to come that were left from the world that was destroyed with nukes. And from Atlantis we have Thoth, who escaped Atlantis with a few of his comrades in a ship and sailed east, which means came from the Atlantic Ocean, entered the Mediterranean, and settled where today is Egypt. And he built there the Pyramid of Cheops, or the Great Pyramid of Giza. This was when Atlantis and Phonecians ruled the world. All these tribes that later became nations and then disappeared, except Greco-Albanians, all they appear to have spoken the same language as the ancient Greeks spoke, or that the Albanian still speak. The ancient Greek language is what is known today as the modern Albanian language, and it is through Albanian language or Greek, ancient Greek language, that we can decipher Phoenicians' writing and Sanskrit's writings, and what you have in Italy, Etruscans. Now, in order to support this theory, we have to go to ancient Greco-Albanian words, and the most ancient and the element, the atom of the all words spoken by mankind is letter A, as we spell it in English, A, and pronounce it A. Letter A. A, in ancient tongues of Balkan, where the Phonecians who sacked Atlantis lived, meant to be, the word to be, is A. And it had been transformed, I think in linguistics we call that a rotation. It had transformed in all the Illyrian-speaking tongues, including Italy. Italy is formed by wherever we go. If we go by destruction of Troy, we go with Enea, or we go with Dardanians. Dardanians are the one who fought against Greeks in Troy, and Greeks at the time were not different race, but different kind of tribes within a big tribe. So Greeks united the Spartans, mostly Machaeans, and fought against the other Illyrians of Troy. Pretty much were the same people fighting against same people. But letter A, in northern Albania, which is a dialect called Greek, that meant in ancient Greece giant. A mean to be, A where, A atje, A is asht, is the fullest, longest form. A was the short. In the middle Albania we call Shqipria e Mesme, it is O, which means is to be, for asht. If you go a little bit southern, which is the dialect of Tosk and Arvanites, which are the real ancient Greeks, it becomes and so the letter A, which is spelled A, means to be asht. It rotated to O in parts of the middle Albania or Shqipria e Mesme, we call to be is asht. O. In southern Albanian Greek speaking, and A in Italy. All of them mean to be. Now, why it is very important to go with this word? There are two main words that takes us to support the theory that the Atlantis and Phonecians, who were the biggest nations, spoke the same language, that is Greco-Albanian was ancient Greek or modern Albanian. We have to focus on the words, which is one syllable, actually is a vowel, A, O, we have to focus on the word fa, fa, which means to say, fa, and from where comes thought, the one who says in past tense, and theology, things that are said by God, whatever. We have to focus on word fa. We have to focus on word j. J. J has been jo in northern tribes and jo in southern tribes of Albania, which mean when we go to southern, we include the Greek-speaking tribes, and when we go north is the Illyrian tribes who survived and formed the Illyricum province that was the recruiting ground later on for the Roman Empire. So ja or jo means think, means matter, and from there comes the word jo, which means the everything else is the Gaia, mean the land. The ja is a thing that you can touch. Ja, o, ja, a, je, o. It remains on those same different sounds of the same word of one, made of one vowel. O, e, a. Ja, o. And that is the land. And from there comes geometry, that you measure, and not geo, how to measure a thing. But geo is the earth, and geo is the matter, and geo is everything that exists. Now, why do we think, why is it some, and the word z, you have to remember the word z, that tells you even where the Bible comes with the first was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, whatever. So they all originate from the ancient Albanians words, myths, and when I say ancient Albanian, is ancient Greek, because Albanian Greek was one, is one, and was divided in two for the interest of Europe in order to create a buffer zone between the Muslim world of Turkey and Europe. But this is too much to go and talk about that right now. We stick with the word, with few words. A, which is different variation of the same word to be. And th, to say, to speak, but not simply to speak, but to say something, to tell something of importance. And that world that was remained after the war between Phonecians and the Atlantis, they formed a city of the brilliant minds, where things are set, where the wisdom springs and radiates the entire world. This was Athena. Atje ku thuat a, where is, and the, to be set. Athena is the place where the brilliant mind of the ancient world spoke. They made the laws. There were the oracles who predicted the future. There were the poets, philosophy, and all comes with the two words. Athena, atje ku thuat, there where the wisdom springs and lives on. Now, the, to say, is a word, a divine word that comes from gods and forms the theology, the wisdom that comes from whatever source is divine. And that's where we have today theology, is the saying, the wisdom that comes from above. That's the religion, theology. Now we have thought, which is actually thought, is the one who says, the one who teaches. He comes from Atlantis. He goes to Egypt, and you have to read the emerald tablets of thought for that. And what is his word again? Is still with the Greco-Albanian to say, thought. Thought is the past tense of say. The is, or them, the is the present, the, elethua is the same word to say. So is thought, the one here. In order to speak, you have to have a voice. So the word cannot be spoken without the voice. And the one who speaks is the one who is above us, is the God. How we call the God? In ancient times, we call it Z, and we call it Za. Z is the voice that we said A and O, between north and south. Whatever sounds O, in other Illyrian tribes, it will sound in the southern tribes of southern Albanians or Greeks. And we have the first God that we know. We call it Zeus. Zeus. Z is the voice. The Albanians still call it Zo. Zoti. Zo. So it's still the thunder, it's still the voice that comes from above. So it is the same, and whenever later on the Abrahamic religions will come to be, they'll borrow this idea and tell the world the same thing. The first was the voice, the word, Zeusi, the thought that says, the theology. So all these things have a ancient root that goes beyond Greco-Albanians, but it has survived in only 3 nations as in ancient times, and those 3 nations are the Greco-Albanians that are one, even though they speak now totally differently because Greeks formed a new language. Some based on the ancient Greek and the Albanian, and some new words that go a little bit farther, but the origin is still the same. For example, in Albania we say ka ra floku. Ka has, ra fallen, the hair. Ka ra floku, and kara flok, it means a ball in Greece, for example. It's the same language. It doesn't matter. We're the same people. The world has divided us because if we unite, then we'll become a superpower in Europe, because half of the Turkey was Greco-Albanian, and so was Ukraine that is fighting today against Russia and Bulgaria and Romania and all those Croatians. They are Illyrians. Half of the Serbia, they are Illyrians, Albanian, Greco-Orthodox that became Slavs. It doesn't matter. But so these words that I just said, that are the for theology, Z for Zeus, thought for thoughty, Ge for geology, all these are not the words that only Albanian and Greeks could have had, but they survived there, or survived somehow in Armenia too. Armenia is a distant cousin of the Greco-Albanians. But what it means is that there is a language in the world that people are not paying much attention to, and that is the ancient Greek that we think doesn't exist, or the modern Albania that exists. If we realize that sooner rather than later, then we'll be able to decipher all the lost languages that could have had a huge impact of changing the history of mankind, because through Albanian or the ancient Greek, whatever you choose to call it, you can explain the Phonecians word, Etruscans words, a lot of ancient Egyptians, and we need to realize that sooner rather than later. And so please pay attention that there is a language still in the world. I hope it will not disappear, and that is spoken by the Albanians in Albania, Arboretes in Italy, and Arvanites in Greece, and Chamis in Greece, and some other Greeks who still speak it secretly in their home because they're ashamed and embarrassed. The world has taught them to be ashamed of that language. Even the church and the priests used to tell them in 18th century, 1700, 1800, not to speak that language that they spoke at home, Albanian, because that's the language of demons. But that language of the demons is the language of the ancient Greeks, is the language of the modern Albanians, and is the only language that will help whoever is interested to decipher whatever writings we find in Sanskrit or Phoenicians or in the long-gone Etruscan language. Thank you very much. I hope you were able to catch any word with my English that is far from being, I believe, understandable. Sammy, bye-bye.